So, hello, listeners. My name is Philly, and I am the content editor at Experience Travel Group. And this is our inaugural ETG radio podcast launching with Vietnam and our lovely Andy Mossack, who is the presenter on Where in the World is Andy for BBC Radio. He is also the founder of tripreporter.co.uk, which provides professional travel advice for those interested in exploring the world. Hello, Andy.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, great actually. Just recovering from another trip. Fortunately, I am travelling probably more times than I am back in the UK, but that's always good.
Brilliant. So recently Andy travelled with us to Vietnam, and the first kind of question I wanted to ask was what originally interested you in the country and how did we come to help you with your trip?
Yeah, Vietnam's always been a boyhood dream of mine. Actually, I remember growing up in the 70s and seeing these pictures on TV of this landscape and American soldiers during the war, and for some reason it resonated very much with me, and I've always harboured a real passion to go back and visit. So I had a friend who mentioned that Experience Travel Group are Southeast Asia specialists and suggested that I speak to you guys. I had a chat with Sam Clark, and it came over as being, yeah, we can plan something tailored to the kind of things I wanted to see, and I really wanted to sort of cover as much of the country as I perhaps could in maybe 10 days. And so we got an itinerary together, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Brilliant. And what was it that you particularly wanted to see and do?
Well, perhaps it's slightly different from a typical tourist, because one of the things I try to uncover in a country is the sort of the non-touristy aspects of it. You know, where are the places that are hidden, the people that know, where I can get an experience of what it's like from a local perspective, where can I get some history, where can I see some of the things that are not just obvious tourist places. And they're the kind of things, as a professional travel writer, we're always looking to try and uncover. So the good part about that was that Sam knows the area very well, and I wanted a combination of what it's like to be a tourist first off, and I wanted to explore some hidden parts. So the idea was that we start off in Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon as the locals call it, and I actually love that word Saigon, because to me it just conjures up all kinds of wonderful exotic pictures in my mind, and then go into the middle, which is a sort of Hoi An and that kind of area, and Da Nang, and then that's the central area, then north up to sort of Hanoi and over in Halong Bay. So that was the sort of itinerary that we looked at. And then within each one, we were set up with some really good on-the-ground, experienced local people who really knew their thing. And I guess out of it all, there has been some terrific memories. I mean, do you want me to give you a couple of interesting bits of all three areas?
Exactly. I was just about to say,
Okay.
you're looking for things off the tourist trail. What really remained in your mind? What were the key memories that you took from that trip?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think Saigon is made up of different districts, and District 1 is the main sort of downtown area where all the major sites are. So you've got the cathedral, and then you've got the War Museum. It's called the War Remnants Museum. So everything is walkable in Saigon, in downtown. And then I went to go and see this beautiful 18th century post office. I mean, it's got a lot of French influences in it, because obviously the French in Indochina it was part of the French Empire, to be honest, for 200 years. So there's a huge amount of French influence in there, from the buildings and also from the food. So we did all of that, but then I was suggested to me that perhaps we move out of the centre and go into District 4, for instance, and that's much more of a local area where there's literally no Westerners. And I went with a guide. He took me to the Zom Tu market, where people go every day to go and buy goods for their homes. And it's an amazing indoor market which is full of fresh herbs, fresh meat, fish, all kinds of things, and everybody's it's kind of a hubbub of the local part of the city where everybody talks and argues. I heard them all arguing, and I said, "Are they arguing?" And he said, "No, they're all negotiating, but it's all part of the ritual of buying." And then I couldn't believe that this fish and meat was all on display with no ice, no cooling area, And I said to Hugh, who was my guide, I said to him, "This is amazing. There's no ice on this fish." And he said, "Well, it's not around for long enough. I mean, it's literally only been caught about an hour ago, and then it's gone within another hour. So there's no time for it to go off. So it's really that fresh." The other thing while I'm at it is, I mentioned to you about the fact that I was taken as a young boy with the whole images of the Vietnam War, and there were two places that we went to which resonated very much with me. One was the Caravelle Hotel, which is where all the war correspondents were based, and it's a fabulous old hotel, and it's now been renovated, and the top floor is now a pretty swish bar. It's a rooftop bar, cocktail bar. So there I am, sort of trying to think of what it was like back in the day, 1973, 1974, when all this, when Saigon was surrounded by the North Vietnamese army, what was going on there. And I was trying to sort of think of what it was like, and there was all these photos around the walls of black and white pictures of correspondence. So that was pretty exciting for me. And then the other thing was, there's a very famous photo of a helicopter lifting off from the roof of what was the CIA headquarters in Saigon. And it was a picture of the very last American helicopter leaving the city. Big old black and white picture of a load of people on a ladder trying to get up into this helicopter before the North Vietnamese entered the city. And I got taken to the very building where that was, and we managed to get up on the roof, and exactly on that flat roof where that helicopter stood. So I had a bit of a goosebump moment. That was fantastic. And for me, it kind of made the circle. So, standing there, just imagining that the world was looking at this place in 1975 was quite a moment for me. Then we flew with Vietnam Airlines up to Da Nang, and again we were picked up at Da Nang and driven maybe 40 minutes to Hoi An, which is a lovely village which has been spared all of the conflicts in Vietnam, and it's almost a perfectly preserved medieval, if you like. It goes right back to the 15th century. A fantastic old town, very, very much as a kind of how Vietnam was historically. And it was at one time a very busy port. It was the place to go as far as port life was concerned in central Vietnam. So today it's a little bit more touristy than that. It's got bars and restaurants and these lovely old merchants' houses, which at one time were full of tea chests of perhaps tea and produce, is now really very much catering for the tourist traffic. But having said all of that, it's a lovely place to wander around, particularly at night, when I think it sort of has a completely different feel to it. And then outside of Hoi An itself, there's these really lovely beach resorts, because Vietnam has got this incredible coastline which runs literally all the way along the whole country, and the central area, beach area, is a particularly nice place to just kick back and relax. So there's one or two or three very nice beach resorts along there, and we were recommended to go there to the Victoria Hoi An resort, which is where we stayed. And in fact, the GM there is a motorbike fanatic, and he loves driving a sidecar, a motorbike with a sidecar, and he offers it to guests for an hour or 2 hour drive, and he takes them and we went on a bit of a journey, a bit of an adventure with him, and he drives out into the countryside and along paddy fields and by the side of horses and oxen and all kinds of people, and he just sort of takes us out to see local life into these lovely little villages, and you can imagine on the side of a sidecar bumping over these paddy fields and just passing by fishermen and all kinds of things. And for me, it was another glimpse at local life without necessarily the tourist trappings. So that was a perfect example for me of just uncovering the real Vietnam.
How did the locals respond to seeing you in a little sidecar and a motorbike?
Do you know what? They are so lovely, the Vietnamese. They're very warm, very hospitable, always smiling. And in fact, you go and take pictures of them and they just give you a beam. They're so nice. And we stopped by a lady farmer who was these great watering things. They sort of a big pole they stick over their shoulders and hang things from. The locals tend to walk around like that with their lovely conical hats on, and this lady had 2 watering cans, one on each side of this pole, and she was walking up and down her patch, her agricultural patch. And when we stopped, she came over to us and offered for me to try it. So she put her hat on my head, and I heaved these 2 watering cans with this pole across my shoulders and walked up and down. And she was making sure that I did it properly, And I was just watering her crops for her. And she didn't want anything. She didn't want any money. She just wanted to show me what it was like. She was very proud and saying, "Look, these are my crops, and thanks for taking interest in me," which was really lovely.
Were they heavy, the water?
They were ridiculously heavy. Yeah, I mean, this poor lady. I mean, she was like so small, and she came up to my sort of my belt, and it was it's so nice. Obviously, very hardy lady, and I just wasn't expecting it, and. It's not something they see a lot of, but clearly, they're just a very hospitable race, very, very nice. And so that was fun too. That was fun. And then finally, we had a bit of R&R on the beach, which was very nice. And then we flew again up to Hanoi. And for me, Hanoi has been I always worried because Vietnam is still a communist country, although you wouldn't believe it was because of all the commercialism. There's all kinds of shops. There's Western shops in Saigon, and you can buy things incredibly cheaply. And we went to Hanoi, and that was the sort of headquarters of the North Vietnamese army. And for me, it was Ho Chi Minh. That was his power place, and I had no idea what to expect. But when we got there, it was really lovely, and it's a city that's got 34 lakes in it, and the lakes are everywhere around the city. So wherever you go, you get these lovely expanses of water, and people are walking around the lakes, or they're doing yoga, or they're just chilling out and having a picnic. There's all kinds of things going on there, which is lovely. And Hanoi, for me, it's a bit like Saigon, but much smaller. So it's less frenetic, and the food is different because it's in the north. So it's great to be able to taste the different variances when you walk, when you visit these different parts of the country. And so, yeah, we had a lovely time in Hanoi, and went to see Ho Chi Minh's mausoleum, which is guarded 24 hours a day. He's in a glass-covered coffin, if you can get your head around that. So people can see him, and they have sort of this constant parade of people through the day paying homage to the great man. And you can visit his little house that he lived in, which was very modest, considering that he was the president of the country. And he didn't stay in this big grand palace that they have. They only kept that for visitors. So he always lived in this little hut, this sort of stilt hut that, as far as he was concerned, fitted him perfectly. So that was quite interesting too. And then we then took a seaplane from Hanoi across to Halong Bay. Have you heard of Halong Bay?
Of course, I don't know who hasn't. It's amazing.
The UNESCO treasure that is Halong Bay. Yeah, absolutely amazing. 2,000 little islands and islets, and it's breathtaking. And to take a seaplane instead of driving, which is about 3 hours from Hanoi, you can take a seaplane across and land actually on the sea, and just literally in between these huge, little this morass of islands, and it's fantastic. And we took a 2-day cruise out around the islands, and that's an absolutely must do if anybody's in the area. It's something you definitely do not want to miss, and that's fantastic too. So all in all, I think it really ticked every box for me, I must say. And as an old cynical travel writer, I must say, Vietnam to me was a breath of fresh air.